focus, in particular. The last few years I've been in my own law practice and doing conservation transactions and lobbying and planning. I have made no bones about it. I think that in talking with your staff, with the supervisors who I've met, and with folks in the community, I think that it's something that undertaking this effort is essential to your goals that you have for your general plan and goals that folks in the community have, whether they're in the agricultural sector, environmental community, or in the development business, or for local government as well. Even though a habitat conservation plan, mainly is designed to comply with endangered species laws, and Stephanie mentioned U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but you're also going to have to talk to Fish and Game. They work together closely on this, and most of the species you're dealing with probably have state and federal oversight or regulatory needs. And so, when this was set up under the Endangered Species Act in the 80s, I don't think anyone realized what a powerful planning tool it would become. It's not just for permitting take of species, a modification of habitat on a particular project site. It has a much bigger ripple effect through a community. And I think a lot of times when communities haven't been going through a general plan update or using their local land use tools, the HCP process has become almost a de facto planning device, and I certainly saw that in Southern California. It's hard to make choices under the general plan. There are some things I think that general plans do very well, and there are other things in terms of, you're not going to be greeted with enthusiasm if you start drawing lines on the map in Calaveras County saying we want to protect these areas from development for all time. That doesn't work very well. An HCP coordinated with your general plan will allow you to start to develop standards and a process for not just addressing endangered species. And that's the point I really want to make today is, Calaveras County, I've seen counties that have been locked down because of endangered species problems, where the issues you're seeing in the western part of the county have pale in comparison to what was happening in San Diego and Los Angeles, Riverside in the 80s and early 90s for some other species that you don't have here. And once the planning effort gets underway and once you get an agreement from the wildlife agencies that you can actually move forward with some projects, what really starts to happen is you start to be able to pick up other resource needs, whether it's your oak woodlands ordinances and goals for oak woodlands or riparian areas, or, very importantly, your recreational objectives. I think you'll find this process to help you with all those things. The other thing, which I don't think you're going to get any other way, is financial support. If Calaveras County is in a position to meet its open space, recreational habitat objectives, that costs money. You can't zone your way into that. You might be able to in some areas, but for the kinds of protection that hopefully you want to see, you either need, at some point you need to engage with private landowners for purchase of land, for easements, for other mechanisms that allow for some assurances that that land will be protected. And that's certainly what the wildlife agencies are going to want to see. If you start an HCP, you will all of a sudden be eligible for funding. Fish and Game and Fish and Wildlife have planning grants. Prop 84 that passed last November has a significant amount of money for planning HCPs as well as actual implementation funding. As I mentioned, this isn't going to work unless each of the, I don't mean to generalize too much, but unless the agricultural, environmental, development communities are on board, just like probably with the general plan, you're not going to, this will take a longer time until everyone feels comfortable with whatever develops. Also, your own public works projects are going to be part of this, whether you like it or not. I'm going to conclude here in a second. I started last spring and summer meeting with folks in the community. I don't live in Calaveras County, but I do a lot of work in the foothills, Amador, Calaveras, and El Dorado. And I met with the Calaveras Planning Coalition last summer, and we had Stephanie was there, we had a very frank exchange of views. I think there was a lot of concerns about how this would meet the needs of the environmental community. There were some folks who felt like this wasn't a particularly good idea. I have some follow-up I'd like to do with the coalition. I essentially stopped working on this when you started your general plan update. The energy shifted dramatically to the general plan process, and I was kind of just waiting to see how this would play out. And I don't want to say I'm glad the Fish and Wildlife Service wrote that letter, but I think that you have to deal with this sooner or later, and it's much better to deal with it as part of your ongoing process with the general plan. I guess what I'm saying is here, for my own involvement, I look forward to working with the county, with your staff, and also, there's going to have to be a working group that advises you along the way that has to be representative of all the major sectors in this county. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and look forward to this getting kicked off.
Any questions for Mr. McCall from the board members?
Just a clarification. You said you are retained and working for Valley Springs LLC. Mm-hmm. Who or what is Valley Springs LLC?
Valley Springs LLC is a limited liability corporation based in Valley Springs. Some of the major landowners, Ryan Voorhees is involved, I think helped get it started. And over the last year, I don't know the entire, corporate membership or supporters, but it's folks in the landowning community in Valley Springs, Wallace and Burson. It's a group from that region. And like I said,
and they obviously retained you to speak on their behalf as their agent.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other?
Finish filling out my address here.
Yeah, I just had one comment. John, you mentioned that one of the benefits of getting this implemented would be the fact that we could qualify for grant funding, but it's always been kind of a paradoxical thing in my view that without it, any local mitigation that somebody is charged, say for instance, they've got oak trees that they have to mitigate, without the HCP, we aren't able to keep, if I understand it correctly, we can't keep those funds within our county. Right. Is that about right?
It is, and I make the distinction there. There are grant funds that the county can pursue to actually help put this plan together. But what Supervisor Thomas is referring to is that right now, because the county doesn't have a mechanism for in-county mitigation, people are going to have, landowners who have mitigation requirements under the Endangered Species Act, there's no prohibition against them doing that mitigation in another county. So the fact that there's no plan on the books means that you are missing out on an opportunity here for land protection. And that's not land protection you're paying for, that's on from the private sector. The other grant funds, an HCP does not have to be completely implemented through private mitigation funds. The successful programs have used and matched public money with private money. So, one of the things you're going to have to do is put a price tag on what your conservation objectives are. And certainly the private sector will be a big part of that. There are a lot of mechanisms for creating mitigation programs that everyone understands the rules. The county's, your closest neighbor, San Joaquin, the COG administers their HCP and collects mitigation fees and helps implement projects. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but you're absolutely right. Until you get it in place, you may not even know how projects are being mitigated because they don't have to come back to you. The county's going to be key in this. Most of the time when an HCP is approved, it is delegated, the permitting authority and implementation is delegated to the local level. So you all, not necessarily, you sitting here day to day, but the county will have a lot of authority to help make this work.
So John, the point of these HCP is to allow landowners to actually dedicate their land to habitat conservation, where it could be a mitigation bank for various mitigation measures that people are required to do to otherwise use their land. If they have a land use issue that involves mitigation for various biological resources, these areas can be voluntarily committed to that conservation for several mitigation measures. Is that correct?
It is. I just want to be clear about a couple of things. One is that under federal law, an HCP really if you look at it strictly, it's for endangered species. Now, as I was saying before, in actuality, what really happens is you start looking at things from a habitat perspective. And the state program, just so you can start getting familiar with the acronyms, the state program, parallel, is called the Natural Community Conservation Planning Program, NCCP. So you'll start to see HCP/NCCP. Was set up and is broader to make it clear that, yes, we want to focus in on protecting endangered species where they live specifically, but the best way to do that is to look at the landscape. So you can structure this plan so that landowners are, in essence, doing one-stop shopping, whether it's oak woodlands or riparian or grasslands, whatever you decide. You obviously need to work with the wildlife agencies, but that's exactly right.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the public?
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
There's one back there.
Oh,
Mr. Buckley.
Good morning. I know you know who I am, John Buckley, representing our members in Calaveras County. And I apologize that Tom Hofstra, our botanist, ecologist, can't be here today. He's teaching at the college, but this is an issue that he's especially up and involved with and has been communicating with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the past few months, discussing the species that are directly affected by the projects that Stephanie listed. I think that most of you on this Board of Supervisors, if not all of you, would admit that up to this time, Calaveras County has not made wildlife protection a high priority. I mean, let's cut to the chase and admit that when our center or others have come before this board or have discussed items with Bob and Stephanie about wildlife, that we have not prevailed when it's come to votes and have not gotten mitigation measures that have provided great benefits for wildlife, or we haven't gotten from this board of directors a clear commitment that it's a priority and that we know that certain supervisors in particular think it's not a priority because they've been very clear about that. So suddenly today we have Stephanie coming forward, and I think her words were something to the effect of, we've come to the point where wildlife issues could limit or eliminate the ability to develop in the western end of the county. Our center respectfully disagrees that that's the situation. What we do believe is that in habitat for the California tiger salamander, for the spadefoot toad, and where there are vernal pools, that continuing to have development that doesn't protect those is a conflict with what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will allow. And so what we see is that you could continue to have development projects go forward in that end of the county, many of them, but not in the areas that are so precious or important for the species that the government, not our center, not someone else, has identified as being the species that are of the greatest significance. And so the challenge becomes, is there really a need at this point for the county to negotiate, to start into a process that will be very time-consuming, and for those of you that want to see a general plan move forward in a quick, effective fashion, will delay that process and will almost certainly complicate the process? Or are there other ways to continue to have development projects move forward, but come up with mitigation measures that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says, that's plenty. You've provided a big corridor area, or you've provided additional buffers. So the first thing I throw out is there are alternatives to what's being put on the table. The second is that I happen to know John from a long time back, and I've worked with him because I've been involved with Audubon. John is a very conscientious, highly professional, very, very well thought of representative. But in this case, he's also the representative for the developer's interests. And if you have a habitat conservation plan process, he and other experts that the developers can hire are going to be very, very effective for the interests that they are representing. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't do that because, again, he's very professional and I admire the work that he does. Those of us on the other side, in the midst of all the chaos and issues that come forward, will have far less resources and ability to influence the plan. And as Stephanie is fully aware of, actually the amount of public participation in a habitat conservation plan that is required is very limited. It can be voluntarily expanded, and I think that's what she was talking about, but the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service process and the Section 10 language that is involved doesn't require it. And I would end with one key caution, and this happens to come out of Audubon's Citizen Guide to Habitat Conservation Plans. It talks about what the Section 10 exemption from the Endangered Species Act allows, and it says the principle underlying the Section 10 exemption from the Endangered Species Act is that some individuals of a species or portions of their habitat may be expendable over the short term as long as enough protection is provided to ensure the long-term recovery of the species. In other words, in this process, the Fish and Wildlife Service will be determining where it's okay to let species be wiped out, because someplace else, hopefully there'll be enough protection given that it will provide some benefit. And that's a judgment that someone at some point will make based on the information that's available. All our center is sharing at this point is we're really, really cautious and concerned that this is a process that is most likely to help developer projects continue to move forward in a fairly rapid time period. And I would simply ask the same question I've asked when we were before you on Tuscany Hills or any other project. If you have 17,000 vacant lots, plus the 3,000 some odd at Oak Canyon Ranch units that are approved, all these others, the thousands of lots, is there really a need to rush forward or hurry forward additional development projects around Valley Springs? Or is waiting until you have a general plan process that hopefully will be done in 2 years, is that more appropriate rather than trying to speed the process? I'm not giving the answer. Obviously, that's something that's very complex, but I ask you to think about it. Thank you.
Okay, John? John, excuse me, I think Rita has a question for you.
Sorry.
John, I'm not sure I understood you. Maybe Mr. McCall had said, or you had said, it takes a long time to do a habitat conservation plan. And then I thought I heard you say there's options. One is piecemeal by project. And then do you want the habitat conservation plan to hold up the general plan? Normally, I'm right with you on most things. I don't know what it is you're saying. Is it that you're recommending that we don't proceed with this in total or by at least the Valley Springs area? Or
Okay.
what are you saying, John?
Okay. To restate it, one, for your first question, actually some habitat conservation plans can be completed in months, but ones for broader areas, and John will be the expert, you can ask him on that, can take up to years. And what I'm sharing is in the same way some of you have concerns about community plans adding to the complexity of your general plan process, anything else you add in, whether it takes additional months of analysis or years of analysis, if you're tying it to the general plan, it means the general plan may take longer to get completed. I think that's pretty basic and simple. If you're asking what our center believes should be done in this matter, I'm simply pointing out that we feel that we're most likely to get steamrolled, our center, our staff scientists, and those that we represent in your county, if this process is a process that moves forward like many habitat conservation plans where those that are hired by the developers have so much expertise in the planning process, and people here in Calaveras County have never participated before. It's going to be a very dubious outcome from our perspective.
But they're not going to be the ones doing the habitat conservation plan, are they?
The Habitat Conservation Plan will, if the county is the one that's applying for it, the county is doing it with Fish and Wildlife Service, and actually there's a whole part of the process which isn't even a public process. It's being done to whatever extent that they choose to make it public, but it's done in coordination with them, with the input of various scientists and others, including those that will be consultants hired by the developers.
Well, would not your organization want us to do it at least in parallel with the general plan?
We think that your general plan could already come up with very positive wildlife policies that would protect at-risk species. Tuolumne County has very clear policies that protects at-risk species. They don't have a habitat conservation plan, and they require that there's no development in areas where there are those species. It's a different approach than this county has envisioned in the past. I'm simply saying there's alternatives. Obviously, you feel like you want to go forward, but I'm throwing out early that instead of the conservation community being enthusiastic, we have many cautions. And I would suspect that even on the board there will be people who will have cautions about a government plan that may affect the outcome of the county. That's separate from what you're already doing. Okay. So I'll be glad to answer any questions afterwards, either by email, phone, or whatever, if you're still puzzled.
I think so, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Dave Tanner from Valley Springs, and for the record, it's the Friends of Valley Springs LLC, not Valley Springs LLC. So just as a correction there. And I'm the president of the Friends of Valley Springs LLC. We're a group of people in Valley Springs that do care about the community, but and I hate to just say we're all developers. There's a lot of good people who volunteer their time to help us. People who don't have pure development interests in mind, people like Tom Coe, who have been working diligently to try and bring a college to our community and other trade school programs. There's a lot of good that can come from this. I think one of the things for clarification that I'd like to express is developers have been paying for mitigation all along. Just recently, Ryan Voorhees got a permit to put in a community swimming pool behind Gold Creek Estates, and in doing that, there was a small area that he had to fill in wetlands, and so he had to buy mitigation credit somewhere, and he searched and he found a place where he could write a check for $290,000. So my argument has been, we're taking the hits here, other people are getting the money. We have needs in our communities. We have areas, habitat areas that need preservation. We have roads that need to be moved to pull them out of riparian corridors. We have park repairs. Murphy's Park had a problem with flooding. We have some flooding issues in Cosgrove Creek. There's a lot of areas that can use this money, and I'd rather see it kept in our county than going to other places to benefit their counties. And I don't know how that could hurt us. I think secondly, it was important, Stephanie mentioned this could be done, there could be segments, pieces done right now to get this in place while it goes through the general plan process. Mr. Mentier, when I spoke with him about the process, said the ideal time to do an HCP is in conjunction with your general plan update. Thank you very much.
So Dave, you mentioned the $290,000 that was paid in mitigation fees. You mean that was invested outside Colorado
I think
County?
that went to Placer or El Dorado County, yeah. And I've heard numbers of $7 million so far that have been spent in mitigating impacts. You know, we don't know about it because we have to do it. Developers have to do it. And there's nothing stopping them. There's no law that says that they can't do it, and they will continue to do it. What my argument is, why don't we keep that here? And that's why I've been one pushing this for the HCP program. We have needs in our communities, and I think this will help address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak to this issue? What?
My name is Ward LaValle. I'm from San Andreas. I only have a question, and that is that if the HCP process is lengthy, I know nothing about it, and we've identified a real serious problem that there's $7 million that has been invested outside of this county. Is there any way we can take action, or the board can take action in a sooner time frame so that we can stop that from happening? Is there any route in addition to or besides an HCP that can help keep those mitigation monies in the county? I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but I think it's pretty important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Unless I'm mistaken, this is the first step. The Community Development Agency is simply asking for authority to enter into the conversation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to see where this is going to take us and what's going to be involved. So it's not like we are making a decision today whether to actually set about making a habitat conservation plan.
I'm Catherine Jackson from the Wallace area. Some of us in our group were very excited to see the possibility of a habitat conservation plan. We've attempted to research this a little bit, and I'm sharing not just my idea, but some questions for the board. We feel that it is at least a 4 to 6 year process if it's done successfully. It takes a lot of buy-in. One of the major questions is a matter of motivation of the board. If you're motivated really to look responsibly at what the total impact is in the more environmentally fragile areas for your landowners in your counties, it's an excellent instrument. But basically, we're talking about accommodation, and if you use the same plan to over-accommodate, then you defeat the very motivation that I would hope you would accept Stephanie's proposal. When a project goes forward, you need to know that everyone needs to buy into it, and you need to know that the developers will seek remedy. It is a very good thing for developers. I wish there was a GIS map where any developer, before he started finishing drafting his improvement plans and his tentative map, could look and say, oh, here's an area I'm going to need to protect. I need to move my road this way or that. It could really speed up the process. The problem with all initial projects, if for some reason the developer gets stuck on the tail end trying to rewrite his negative deck under CEQA, and now he has to backtrack, spend a lot of money, call in a lot more specialists and consultants, and the whole process is backwards. So I'm asking that you hold that in the framework as you consider whether or not you want to go forward with this. You also need to know that these permits to take, what this whole plan is really giving you from the Department of Fish and Game, is a permit to go ahead and destroy or take an endangered species. And for that, the developer may have options under the permit to buy easements or other land dedicated to protection somewhere else. You're used to all of that. The problem is it does let the developer out of the responsibility or liability in many ways. It's something that Mr. Jones needs to look at a little bit further, because it pushes liability for failure under these permits back on the signatures of the HCP, and they are you folks. So I'm just saying, be vigilant and cautious with it. It's something that could be good or bad like anything else. Thank you.
My My name is Jackie Neal from Wallace, and my concern would be what was going to happen to the projects specifically listed on the Fish and Wildlife letter. The Crestview project, the Wallace Lake Estate project, and then we have Trinitas coming up. All this is coming up in a very quick time frame, and by simply saying we approve Stephanie going forward with researching this HCP, does that give these projects a license to just move forward with less scrutiny and not more? Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on this item? Stephanie? Thank you.
Thank you. John McCall was very succinct and I think comprehensive in his explanation. He has far greater expertise, obviously, than I do in this area. However, I want it to be noted that he would be one of many providing information to CDA, and the process would not be our only resource in tapping through this. However, he does have a wealth of knowledge, and we would want to benefit from that knowledge in moving forward. Relative to Mr. Buckley's comments, I think that Supervisor Callaway, that the real issue is that there is a philosophical difference in having an HCP, and I think Ms. Jackson hit the nail on the head. What it does is it allows the developer to get a permit to take a species and to mitigate off-site in order to accomplish a development project. And that basically is what this allows. It allows the taking of an endangered species with the mitigation that some other area of the county will be allowed to be preserved for that species. It's, if you will, a compromise in order to allow a balanced approach to development, that there will be areas that will be impacted, and as a mitigation for that, there'll be areas that will be preserved, hopefully in perpetuity. And I think that's why it seems like somewhat of a contradiction for CSERC not to automatically support an HCP, but that's what that is. Relative to the payment of fees outside of the county, I disagree that there haven't been other alternatives. We've never been approached with a check for $290,000 and said, is there something that you can do with this that would alleviate our ability to take it outside the county? And I'm sure we would have been able to come up with a creative solution to that. So I'm hoping that these types of arrangements that are made outside of the county could involve us, and perhaps we can come up with some ways to hold it in trust and agreements with the federal or state agencies that are involved, that we could keep it on site until we get something in place. And that also answers Mr. LaValle's question, I believe. Relative to Ms. O'Neill's questions about the specific development projects moving forward, the fact that they're mentioned in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services letter means that we have to address their concerns. One of the keys on this, if you note the letter that I gave to you, is that they're saying that the dedication of open space is not sufficient unless there's a way for it to be consecutive with other open space areas. In other words, provide an avenue for these species not to just stay on site, but to move across sites. And that's the thing that's probably been deficient in some of our previous planning. That is what would be looked at in the general plan update. That is what is going to take the length of time that's going to be necessary to put together a good plan, because we will be not only allowing for takings of species by developing habitat conservation plan, but there will be theoretically takings of property that will be associated, whether hopefully voluntarily, where property owners have designated areas that are not suitable for development. That's where the controversy comes in. Sacramento County, I believe, just recently completed their HCP. It took a number of years. They actually have a map that shows those areas that are not suited for development, those areas that are suited for mitigation, those areas that are suited for development. That's why it's essential that this be tied to the general plan update, because it's very much a part of our land use planning, our open space planning, our agricultural planning, and our conservation planning. And that's why I'm recommending that the general plan update is a good place for that to happen. Will it take longer than the rest of the general plan update? I don't know. I think that the questions that we have to answer have to be answered as part of the general plan update anyway. We have to figure out where we want our development to occur, and the Habitat Conservation Plan will allow us to address those even more thoroughly, I think, in the process of not just assigning land use to various areas, but to assess their environmental value as well.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board at this point?
Yes. Tom, did you want to
You go ahead.
Outside if I am really confused for something that I thought I totally supported. And this, what you hope to get out of these discussions, would that be developing a request for proposal to go out to bid, to go out, that's what it is, for someone to do a habitat conservation plan for the county?
What I would hope for, and we've probably missed most of the funding cycles this year just because we haven't had the staff resources to look for grant funding at this time. I'm hoping that will change soon. But what I would hope for is that we would be able to get some grant funding to help us write the HCP, and that in turn could lead to an RFP for services. In lieu of receiving that funding, we're going to have to do something in-house, which means that an in-house person, possibly myself, possibly a general plan coordinator, possibly a planner, would have to be involved in gathering the information necessary to process.
I'm not
The
clear.
HCP is just one option that we need to look at. I mean, it requires an environmental review to adopt an HCP, which means that we have to look at alternatives, much as we do on any other development project. So we would be looking at other alternatives for meeting the mitigation requirements that we need. We have to do something if we intend to continue developing the county.
So just, if you go piecemeal by project, and a project has habitat that we want to protect, what then I thought I heard you say was it becomes a taking, and they use the money to buy habitat somewhere else. Why not just say you have to protect it on this adjacent parcel? And just for conversation, not for how I feel about anything. I need to make that real clear. Wallace Lake Estates has some habitat, and then Crestview has some habitat which is adjoining that, because as I understand, you want to look at where there's consistency over projects.
Consecutive, yes.
Consecutive. So
I believe that
barring that, then can you then say to a project, sorry, this is going to be habitat conservation, and it's going to run over from Wallace to Crestview? That's doing it piecemeal. That's not allowing them an option of buying out.
Wallace Lake Estates has an option of buying out. They've chosen to mitigate on site. Well, actually, it's actually off-site, adjacent to their property, on another piece of property that they own. Part of the problem is that the federal and state agencies believe that the radius for the tiger salamander, I think, is up to 1.5 miles in radius, and we have hopefully no projects that have that kind of radius on them. So it would be impossible to fully mitigate on a project-by-project basis to those standards.
Now, this is just going to dovetail with the oak tree ordinance, isn't it not, when we get an oak tree ordinance?
That you will see a draft of the oak tree ordinance in about a month, hopefully.
A month, hopefully?
We're working on it. I'm going to be working with the Hardwood Advisory Group on it. We've made some commitments that it needs to get out. However, it will be in conjunction with that. The oak hardwood is another, the oak management guideline is another piece, obviously, because it's for habitat protection, not just heritage oaks.
I just sort of feel I'm caught philosophically in a bind on this. I want to proceed, but having people who's Catherine or John, whose positions, I even listen to Dave Tanner. I'm not clear how good this is going to be, and in what format. That's what I'm saying.
The vote today will allow us...
I support the motion before
Okay.
us. I'm just not clear where it's taking us.
As I indicated, the first thing, we've already started to set up a group to come together to have a public discussion. And I've asked Lynn to contact both John McCall and John Buckley to participate in that panel that's going to be giving information there. Along with, I've asked her to get hold of a planning director from another county that's already gone through it. Our point is to bring all of the viewpoints to the table and let the public try to sort through that and come back with that information to the board. So that's happening at the same time in conjunction with our efforts to negotiate something with the federal and state agencies. They're not separate issues. They're going to be very much together. If in the course of our discussions we feel that an HCP is not the way to go, we will come back to the board with that information. We're not going to just do this for the sake of allowing development. What we have to look at is doing something that's good for the county overall. Development is one piece of what is good for the county.
So, Stephanie, let me see if I understand this. Well, first of all, Rita and yourself, I think you've made your point that all you want to do is have authorization to enter into discussions. There's a lot of questions here today, and these discussions hopefully will lead to answers to those questions. But is this not, and I think this is where Rita was going, I realize that HCP is basically for endangered species, but is not the model that you're looking at similar to the provisions of the SB 1334, is it, where with the oak trees, if somebody has to mitigate the taking of the oak trees, they can only do half of the mitigation on site. Then they have to find someplace else, either to write a check or to isolate some property and give up the development rights to it. And at this point, we're not able to, or we haven't been able to do that within the county, and there have been several developers that have had to write checks outside the county to do this. Again, that's for the oak tree, and this is for endangered species. But is it not the same model to do things, to bring it in-house?
Same concept is to allow us to mitigate for those areas that will no longer support
in the county rather than
species.
Going outside the
Yes.
county.
Yes.
Tom, did you have?
A couple comments. Your first request here is authorization for the director to initiate discussions with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. I have no problem with that. I think we should initiate discussions and find out what the parameters are and what all the requirements are, et cetera. And then you go on to say to prepare a habitat conservation plan for Calaveras County. Obviously, the preparation of the plan is the issue will be in the details and what that plan looks like, and I'm assuming we'll have further discussions of how we go about operationally putting that plan together. So I don't mind initiating the discussion. I would like then a study session that goes over the discussion and the parameters of what a habitat conservation plan has to look like. What we identify, do you plant endangered species on it to make it work, or what do you do? And the location, I think, is absolutely critical. You can't, put it right in the middle of prime development property and then tell all the neighbors they can't develop because they're next to a habitat conservation planned area. So, there are a lot of issues that go into that plan. I'll just say for the record, I'm not all in favor of the concept of perpetuity. I think that concept has no validity in the real world, and I think it's absolutely arrogant of anybody to think that they know what should happen in perpetuity, because they don't, nor do I. So I'll say that on the conservation plan, but you haven't talked about the other part of what's before us, and that's and to adopt interim development measures for western Calaveras County. We haven't had any discussion of that component of this agenda item. What are the interim development measures for western Calaveras County that we should be discussing today?
It's all one sentence. What we're asking for is authorization to talk to federal and state agencies that are involved to see what interim guidelines they would allow us if we give a good faith effort that we're going to adopt an HCP or some other similar protection guidelines for the county. So we don't know what it is that they have in mind. We're trying to get...
We're not really... That's all... That will flow from the first discussion.
Right.
Okay. But correct me if I'm in error here. There is nothing in that letter that stops development as long as the development is able to mitigate to the satisfaction of Fish and Game, whether it be in county or out of county. Is that correct?
There is nothing, assuming that a developer has sufficient dollar resources, that would prevent them from possibly entering into an agreement on their own with the federal and state agencies. The 3-lot split that I mentioned earlier would most likely have to come up with at least $150,000 to $200,000 to mitigate at the current levels that we see. That's a substantial burden upon a small homeowner that's trying to do a small split, and that's why we feel that we're going to be pushed to this overall strategy.
Well, I think we should take those 3 lots and allow Marita to lead us that those 3 lots should be dedicated to affordable housing after mitigation.
You got it, Tom. It's a wrap.
I knew we couldn't get through this.
So I think what I'm trying to say is that I'd like to be able to, when I'm entering into the discussions with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and Fish and Game, to say, yes, this board is committed in good faith to doing habitat conservation in Calaveras County. We're hoping to use the HCP, and in return for that, they will allow us to have some interim guidelines to move forward instead of waiting till everything's done.
That's a stronger statement than I'm willing to make at this point. I'm willing to investigate the consequences of what you said. I'm not willing to reach a definitive conclusion without knowing more than what I know today.
Okay.
So.
Steve.
My comments.
Okay, thank you.
My conclusions are similar to Tom's on this. I think we've got a lot to learn about our options, and I'm not prepared to make a decision on that until the facts are all before us. But there are a couple of things that I do want to mention. I am for initiating discussions. I want to know what their concerns are. I want to know a lot more than what's in that letter, which I read as somewhat ominous and not necessarily helpful in solving long-term issues. One of the problems that I've seen with the Endangered Species Act is that we have focused on individual species in a piecemeal and rather, I don't know, I don't think we're recognizing the habitat basis for this, for the decline in species. So I am for habitat conservation. But to do that, you've got to have a lot better analysis than is before us right now on what is sensitive habitat, what is the relationship of these species to that, and what is our comprehensive approach on land use to be able to accommodate both our legal obligations and the growing population of the place. I think a habitat conservation process you're proposing could be one angle, but I'm interested in the following. One is not delaying or not having a separate and additional resource drain on the general plan process. So if these two are moving in sync and bring in additional resources, I'm for it. If it is a If it's just another exfoliation to the planning process, which we've seemed to have on occasion, I would see it as a distraction. I also think another critical element here is who's in the room when this is done. All due respect to LLCs and friends of LLCs, one of the prime movers is a fellow who has not displayed a great deal of interest in habitat conservation. In fact, sometimes says it's the price of doing business to pay the fine, leveling a hill, taking the trees off it, wasting the place, and paying a fine. So while I would see that as one voice in the room, I would sure not want that to be the dominant voice, and I would want to make sure that there's is at least a gathering that is both technically skilled and representative of the full diversity of interests that come to bear on this. So I see CSERC in the room, I see LLCs and friends of LLCs in the room, and I see regular citizens who just care about the place they live in all together. And so I want to see, before I vote for something of the nature, I want to see the composition of the working group that's going to be in it. That said, I really do hope that you will check in with our state agencies and see what we can accomplish in the way of information, and I would favor the study session following that we could sort through.
And then look for board direction.
Yes.
Anyone else?
I sense that other jurisdictions have dealt with this issue, for decades, and our county seems to have an inclination to beat things to death as if they only occur here. So I would think that with Mr. McCall's involvement in San Diego and Sacramento, and his demonstrated ability to pull these things together, that we would just simply just kind of recognize and take advantage of these plans that have been in use in other jurisdictions, and look for the successes and look for the failures, and don't try to reinvent the wheel here. Just get on with business. Be my take.
How dare you simplify things? This is a
I know,
government operation. If I understand the request again, today's motion is simply to authorize the director to investigate what the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service intends for us, and if there are options to the HCP. Not that we are authorizing the HCP or initiating it. There's obviously support for a broad-based discussion, perhaps a study session. But today, we are being asked to make a motion simply to authorize the CDA director to enter into these conversations to see what is being requested of us. Is that? Do I have that, or?
Yes, the analogy I would use is when you give county council the authority to negotiate a settlement agreement, that you've given them some level of authority so the other party knows that the board is serious about and operating good faith, but you're not giving them the authority to enter into an agreement. I'm asking for more than the ability to just investigate the options. We've already had that conversation with them. I'm asking for the ability to say, yes, Calaveras County is interested in conservation planning. It may not be an HCP, it may be something else, but are we interested in dealing with our habitat issues? Yes, we are, and we would like to, in return for that commitment to conservation planning, get some interim guidelines from them. I'm not asking for authority to get an agreement from them or to agree to anything, but I don't know that they're going to sit down at the table and enter into serious discussions with us if the board hasn't given some kind of indication that they are interested in addressing this issue seriously. I guess that's what I'm...
If we change the word adopt to consider, will that give you what you need?
The interim guidelines would be coming from them. So they're the ones that we want to pitch to us what their limitations would be for us to continue development as we work on an HCP. So however you want to structure it is fine.
So it's going to be their interim development measures.
They will tell us what they're willing to allow us to do as we consider how we're going to do habitat conservation in this county.
Well, before we simply take what we're given, I'd like to know what it is. And because I'm not so sure that these folks have our best interest in mind, and I think the further you get away from local input and control, the more dangerous we get in terms of our jeopardies and sometimes expenses. But would it be acceptable to you to have the conversation, get into details, explain that the board is serious about conservation measures and that we know we've got obligations based on their letter. What we're interested in is what their position, what their specific position is in relation to both conservation and habitat preservation, but also interim measures, so that you can report back to a study session that will be devoted to those two aspects.
I think that would make a wonderful motion.
All right. Well, then, well, I'd like to make it more brief than that, if possible. But
what if we do just change the word adopt to consider?
Or consider their, so it's more clear that it's their interim.
And I also, this commits us to two things. One is adopt an interim development measures, which we've expressed some reservations about without knowing what they are. And the second is to prepare a habitat conservation plan, which I think we haven't decided whether that's
to consider a habitat conservation
plan.
They're both for us to just start talking to them about what they put on the table.
If we delete
what a
prepare,
plan looks like.
if we delete prepare and adopt and put consider in both cases,
that's fine.
Then that would be acceptable to me.
Yeah, I probably worded this wrong. It was to initiate discussions about preparing and adopting interim. It wasn't to actually take the action.
I'll second Steve's motion with those two modifications.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, item number 15, you wanted to continue, Tony? Is that the one?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of questions I have for you this morning. First, Rob Houghton is here. Item 7.
Item 7.
Item 7 on the agenda this morning. We adopted that item, and I did not hear that it was adopted as amended. There was a change in the resolution for the dollar amount. Did we adopt that as amended?
I'll move that item 7 from the consent agenda be reconsidered and be adopted as amended.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0.
Thank you for that.
Moving on to item 15.
Item 15, I'd like to cover a little bit of background first, but it's my intent to ask the board on item 15 to continue it for 1 week. Both items 15 and 16 have to do with a series of things that are happening in the discussions of the state of California with secure reentry facilities. Myself, representatives from the Sheriff's Department, Probation Office, and our health agency director all attended a meeting on Friday in Sacramento where we obtained a great deal more information, along with Supervisor Callaway, excuse me for overlooking her. We were all in attendance, and some of the complexity of what's going on is changing a little bit on item 15. So that one would be, we'd request a 1-week continuance.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
So that would be on both of them?
Just on item 15.
So we'll consider 16, but
We should consider 16,
All right.
yes.
Okay, it's been moved. Item number 15 has been moved and seconded to continue 1 week. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0.
Thank you. Item 16, I do have copies up here. If I don't know that everyone has copies of this item, if you'd give those to the sheriff. I believe it was earlier in the week, last week, Sheriff Dennis Downham and the county administrative officer met with the county administrative officer of Amador County and San Joaquin County, along with the sheriffs from San Joaquin County and Amador County. What this letter is basically talking about is there is a facility in Stockton called the Northern California Women's Facility. That facility has not been in use for a number of years due to various considerations, some political, some economic. That facility is currently vacant. San Joaquin County has a proposal for that facility to be used as what we call, and you'll hear me reemphasize this term over and over again, it's a secure reentry facility. And the reason we call it a secure reentry facility because it would be operated by the state of California. There would be correctional staff provided by the state of California and training and rehabilitation staff from the state of California. Under AB 900, a reentry facility is limited to a capacity of 500 beds. This facility holds 750 beds, so San Joaquin County would be doing some negotiation for using part of the facility for the overflow of their own population, but they would be looking at allocating 500 beds toward the use of a regional facility. That regional facility use with the partnership with the state would be for Amador County, Calaveras County, and San Joaquin County. These would be inmates who are in the last year of their sentence, and the goal is during that last year before they're released into our community, and they will be coming back to our community, they will be paroled here. That last year is some intensive efforts at rehabilitation and training. The item before you is simply a resolution to endorse those efforts. We did include two components in there that we're looking for following conditions. One, that the state will invoke priority funding for Amador, Calaveras, and San Joaquin counties. This is another part of our overall strategy for a local jail facility. And in AB 900, those counties that participate with the state in regional reentry facilities, which this term qualifies for, will have priority for what we're going to call Tier 1 funding. So this will help us in our overall funding priorities with the state. Two is just a clarification that it's only for inmates within 1 year of release from state custody and who are to be released to Calaveras County. And three, and this is the real sticky point, and I hope Jeannie Boyce, our health agency director, will address some of this in our conversation. Many of the issues that are before us with the state are in a vast category of unknown, and further unknown. The state has said that they would participate with the rehabilitation training component, the mental health, and the alcohol treatment facilities. We've not seen that in writing from anybody at this point in time. Jeannie's overall state group has sent a letter to CDCR requesting clarification. Jeannie brought up questions related to that at the workshop on Friday and how the state intended to do that. At this point, our goal is that this facility would be no cost to the county. Finally, one of the interesting items that came up on Friday at our meeting with the state was these last 2 pages that we've given to you as an attachment. I don't believe anybody has ever seen these last 2 pages before amongst county staff, CAOs, or the sheriff. It's obvious that the state keeps a great deal of information that would be very helpful for us to know. So it talks about offender risk and needs by population, and the second sheet has to do with your offender demographics. The very last page, of course, when you're looking at the offender demographics, you're really looking at there are 13 in the pre-parole category. In discussions with Sheriff Downham, we feel that the maximum number of inmates that we might contribute to the secure reentry facility on an annual basis would probably be somewhere in the magnitude of 15 to 20 inmates would be Calaveras County's portion. Probably similar numbers for Amador County. I believe their board is considering a similar resolution of support for them. So that means the bulk of the 500 prisoners that would be in in the facility would be San Joaquin County inmates who are within 1 year of being released. So it's a moving target, like many things with the state. There are a series of meetings throughout the state. We had our regional meeting last Friday. I think all of these things that we're doing are just items that our office and the sheriff, I think, has recommended to your board as positioning ourselves to be successful with further grant opportunities from the state. So that's kind of an overall wrap-up. Sheriff Downham is here, Jeannie Boyce is here, Mike Krilitage is here to answer any specific questions you have. And I know Jeff Tuttle, I see him in the audience, wasn't part of the participation on Friday, but I know he'll find some of the information about the offenders probably interesting. May have some comments too, Jeff. So ready for board questions if you have them.
Well, Tom, I noticed the two data sheets that you mentioned don't show it Amador, but they do show Alpine and Mono. That just happens to be the way they put this together, but the agreement you're looking for is between San Joaquin, Amador, and Calaveras?
That's correct. And the state, the reason these charts were done was the state was looking at where they could best partner to pull everybody together. So Amador happens to be more geographically connected with Sacramento County and some of the facilities in that nature that they're looking for, because people, just like their employment opportunities, people are tending to gravitate toward Sacramento County, and that's why they're within that group.
But they are part of this agreement with San Joaquin?
It will be a regional facility, Calaveras, Amador, and San Joaquin County. I think if I could speak for the party, all the participants, the 3 CAOs and the 3 sheriffs were extremely supportive of the project. I don't think there were reservations. City of Stockton has endorsed the project in concept also, as well as San Joaquin County Board of Supervisors has endorsed the project.
Thanks. Comments from the board before I ask anyone? Is there anyone else that wants to speak to this from the audience?
Morning, Jeannie Boyce, Director of Health Services. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say something about the lack of detail that we know about in terms of the funding that will be made available to counties to provide the substance abuse treatment and or mental health treatment that will be needed for parolees upon release. It's clear from our meeting on Friday that things aren't exactly worked out at the state end yet, that in fact it appears that the state will be paying to provide mental health and alcohol and drug treatment services in the facility, in the reentry facilities, which is great. I mean, it's a great concept. I mean, we should start helping people the day they enter prison, not just the year before they're released. That being said, it's great, but what's not clear is what the county's responsibilities will be upon the release of the parolees into the community. If, in fact, we are required to provide case management services for the new parolees coming out that are coming to our county because they will return to the county in which they were legally sentenced, my question is, who's paying for the cost of those case management services? The state talks about counties will be in collaboration with them at the reentry facility, working with the parolees upon release to find them housing, mental health, substance abuse treatment, et al., which all is great in theory, but you have to actually have a body that's traveling then from Calaveras to San Joaquin County, working with their parole agents, which is terrific in concept. My concern is we don't have any general fund dollars to support substance abuse treatment in this county. It's all federal and state monies, and it's spoken for. I would expect that this would cost us some additional monies in the future. So we put that out to the state. They talked a little bit about, they have state-funded rehab services that they'll be developing in counties, in different communities. Marita was with me, and it did not sound to me that those communities where they will be expanding services or contracting with community-based programs right now are going to be located in rural areas. We expressed to them that we don't have many private substance abuse treatment or mental health facilities in small rural counties. We're lucky if we have county outpatient treatment services. So just caution the board that we'll be looking for the details in terms of what the state is expecting the county to provide in terms of treatment and mental health. AB 900 provides $50 million out of the $7.9 billion for rehab services, which is intended to pay for all mental health, alcohol, drug, and other rehab services, which is really a pittance statewide.
In Los Angeles County.
So,
Jeannie, you're paying for them now, though. I mean, we had a gentleman this morning saying he's been in and out of prison, and you're using your resources for that gentleman. And for other inmates released from prison, you're using
correct.
your existing resources.
If they come into the county programs. But we're not traveling to San Joaquin County to provide a service in San Joaquin County, hooking up with the parolees down there. It would just be an additional reason. I mean, it would cost us funding to hire additional staff to do that. And I just question, where's the money going to come from?
Not just the money.
And the
all
bodies,
of you
the
are going to
workforce.
get the staff. That's right.
All right, Steve.
I know you said that we'd only be dealing with the parolees that were sentenced in our county, but if we enter an agreement that's a tri-party county, is there any possibility that we'll be asked to receive folks from, say, the San Joaquin pool? And that's I'd hate to hitch our wagon to that particular pony.
I mean, Dennis can help me out here. It did not appear that way. It seemed pretty clear that wherever the parolees, their last legal residence, that's where they're going. And then those of us in those respective counties are responsible for collaborating with the state.
Actually, Steve, that was the very question that San Joaquin County and Stockton asked of us. They don't want our
Yeah, I was anticipating that.
They don't want our folks staying there either. But bottom line is, these people are coming back to our county one way or the other. I think just the fact that the state is at least giving lip service to taking a shot at rehabilitation, which is something that just simply has not occurred for years. The last 6 months to a year, these people's sentences, it will be intensive. Certainly San Joaquin County has many, many more job training resources and all those kinds of things. Jeannie is absolutely right. I don't know how many different ways we asked the question about who's paying for this, and I don't think it was kind of like maybe, possibly, I don't think they know yet. But bottom line, these are our homegrown folks, and they're coming back here anyway. We pray the state helps them. If they don't, they're going to be in our system anyway.
And we're only asking for a resolution that would convert the facility. We're not agreeing to any eventual costs that would accrue to us, or is that implicit in this?
Well, it doesn't appear to me when I read that resolution. It looks like we're just saying.
It's very clear in every step of the way. The reentry piece of it is the state's dime. That's right. All right. Totally. I don't think anybody came away confused about that one.
For this year.
Whatever. But we think it's a great benefit to us because there's several different options they give you. We could create a reentry facility here, and it wouldn't be cost effective because it would be too small. We could run it with our people, that sort of stuff. Then we would be totally dependent on that state sending the check every year. I just think this is a much, much better situation.
Thanks.
I think to answer that question too, Steve, the item number 3 unresolved is that the CDCR provides programming, so forth, et cetera, at no cost to the county. That's part of our position, that it be at no cost to the county. And I think, as Sheriff Downham did say, sure, we could do a reentry facility here at the state, but we really are interested. Regional facilities get priority for what we call Tier 1 funding under AB 900. So by participating in a regional facility, you up your chances of getting funding for your local jail facility. That's part of our overall strategy.
Okay. Anything else?
Tom, I just want to clarify that the City of Stockton and the San Joaquin Board of Supervisors have passed the resolutions supporting the conversion of the women's facility?
Yes, they have, and they've also had discussions with the legislators in Sacramento about, because of the previous concerns about using it as a prison facility. All those discussions have been taking place.
Okay, because I don't want to support something that they haven't. It's in their county. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move the resolution.
I'll second.
No, it's all right.
Okay, so moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries on a 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, can we take a
Yes.
2 or 3 minute break?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We can take a 5-minute break right now, folks. I'll be right back. Afternoon there. Is there a weekend there?
Let's go lunch.
Oh, this thing. There you go. Thank you. We'll move along to item number 17, discussion and possible action regarding resolution authorizing Assistant CAO, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management, to utilize special recruitment, relocation, and retention incentives for certain specialized positions and approve an emergency salary adjustment for the Planner 3 job classification. Francine?
Good morning. Francine Osborne, Administrative Office. The item before you is brought before the full board based upon recommendations of the Administrative Committee. We have 2 items that we're requesting approval on. My memo to the board is what I consider to be 6 pages of a very complex program. A program of this magnitude requires policies, guidelines, education, knowledge to county departments and employees. Absent all of that, and without knowing where your questions may lie, what I'm going to try to do is, at least in my opinion, highlight for you what I believe to be the key issues in the item before you. So if you'll bear with me, I want to take it step by step. The first item, which isn't quite as complex, has to do with an equity adjustment for Planner 3 positions. The Planner 3 classification series is part of the miscellaneous bargaining unit. The Planner 3 in the last salary survey in negotiations showed that the salary was inequitable. As part of negotiations, we recommended that, I believe there was about a dozen positions that showed inequities, that they be taken care of. The final agreement and MOU did not include an equity adjustment for that position. It's very rare when we do what we call an emergency salary adjustment, and this classification does justify that. My understanding is that we were down 2 Planner 3. It's a very high-level position, but we actually are down 3. The board actually funded an additional position during preliminary budget, and so I wanted to make sure that you understood that. I also have talked to many of my counterparts, and the Planner 3 is a classification that's pretty much known in county government business, and there is a shortage. So being down 3 vacancies, we feel that we definitely need to address the equity and adjustment in order to be able to recruit. Another reason you would do an equity adjustment has to do with the fact that you have a position that has a special need. We've only done this once before, and we did it about 6 years ago as part of the budget process when we were losing dispatchers and having trouble with correctional officers. And we did an emergency equity adjustment outside of negotiations and a current salary survey. And that is the first item that we're asking approval for. I did do a survey. It doesn't answer a lot of the questions that we would be looking for because, again, it's the miscellaneous bargaining unit and the formula is very different. So it does not show an inequity. However, we're not able to find this high-level planner in this county. And as you recall in the study session I had with the board before on recruitment issues, there are a lot of things that really affect recruiting of positions, and I'll get to that in a little bit. So again, the first item is an equity emergency salary adjustment, I should say, for the Planner 3 series. And I think the rationale has to do with the fact that it is a specialized recruitment that we clearly are having difficulty filling. The second recommendation is actually a resolution which would authorize myself to basically utilize what's called special recruitment incentives for certain positions. These are traditionally known as the 3 R's in the field: recruitment, relocation, and retention. They've been around for a long time. They've gone away because of funding and high levels of authority. What's before you today is recommended that the board give me the authority on a case-by-case basis to use these special recruitment incentives for positions that we find difficult and hard to find. As you know, we've used them before for department head positions, and it's actually proven to be very successful. We got 3 department heads because we thought outside the box. We brought in sick leave, we brought in vacation, outside of the traditional things, signing bonuses, moving expenses. Those are all part of this program. What we're asking to do is be even more outside the box and offer them to other positions that we find a need to really try to bring these people into this county by attracting them and keeping them here. And what I did in my packet is I actually broke down each R, as I called them, 3 R's: recruitment incentives, relocation incentives, and retention incentives. And I broke down specifically how each of them work. What they give HR is compensation flexibility. So as you know, government, we have our own compensation deficits, and we traditionally have low-paying jobs. What these incentives do is they allow me to have flexibility in the total compensation package, because believe it or not everybody's totally interested in just the salary. They're interested in the total package. It gives us the ability to negotiate. Obviously, a relocation incentive would not be something that would be given to a candidate in Valley Springs. That's why it's recommended on a case-by-case basis. What you've normally seen is these kind of incentives have been used for 2 of nationwide positions that have proven to be difficult: engineers and nurses. And they're still out there in the field. Do they help? I don't know. In some cases, I think they do. I think that we still have challenges in our county because of the lack of child care, the housing market, the economy, the lack of employment opportunities. I know lots of counties that have 7,000, 10,000, big signing bonuses, moving expenses, and they still are down 11 engineers. And these are counties that are just neighbors of ours. But again, I think they can help in certain positions. Will this program prove to be successful for the 2 classifications that are recommended, which would be the engineer series and the Planner 3 series? I don't know. I don't know if there's much help in the engineering field. Everybody's struggling with the private practice, but it definitely will give us a competitive edge, or at least we'll be able to see if it works. It hasn't worked out in the field lately, but maybe our area and certain things will help in that regard. In the Planner 3 series, nobody's doing it. Nobody's using incentives. So why not try it and see? We know everybody's looking for the same people, and they're looking for these high-level planners. We know it's a priority of the board. I do want to mention a few things because I do think it's really important that some of the items that are written in my memo be brought forth to the board for consideration. We are coming up on negotiations, and I think that it's important that we make sure that we deal with pay inequities on their own. I think that these incentives may assist in a candidate making a career move with just some good hard cash. We do not have the funding currently in the budget to accommodate these type of expenses. Obviously, in the Public Works Department, they have funding, so they can afford to pay for these types of incentives. The Community Development Department will require general fund monies to support these incentives if approved. I think what makes us even further unique by the board approving the use of these incentives is that we do something different than others don't, and I mentioned it early. We will allow people to bring in sick leave, vacation, prior credit for longevity. That on top of these other programs could really help us in trying to find quality people. Again, I think, as with any new program, absent policies, guidelines, education and knowledge, I think that we need to look at this as a pilot program for the county. This is something that I think all departments should be looked at, and we should determine what other classifications could be eligible for this as we move through this. Maybe we use this as the first stage or the first phase and take a look at those types of issues. And other than that, I think it's best to just leave any questions for the board at this point. I did put the fiscal impact for both departments based upon the items I could actually put my finger on. There's some things that obviously when you have the vacancies and you bring someone in, you can't really know what their situation would be, how much sick leave, how much vacation that we may bring in. So the things that I knew that I could put a dollar amount to, I did. So I guess I'll open it up for questions. I won't go over every little program that's proposed here.
Thank you, Francine. Questions, comments from the board?
Francine, on page 5, I just want to clarify the last sentence of the first paragraph.
You want to understand the retention incentive that would be from year 1 to year 5.
Right. So go ahead.
Okay. What I'm proposing here is that, and I believe, let me take you back to help you. Go to page 4. Go to the third paragraph. And what I'm basically recommending is for these positions, we would give a retention incentive to allow these employees to stay on board. So during year 1, they would get $1,000. During year 2, we're proposing $1,500 on top of everything else. It would be like a little bonus.
Okay.
And on and on and on. There's 2 other things that I'm glad you brought that up that I proposed in here, just throwing it out to get some discussion is, I think that if we go with these programs, then I think that service agreement or some type of commitment from these candidates is important as well. So we need to draw something up, and I can work with County Counsel's office, where if we are going to throw this kind of money out, you don't want to throw it out and then in a year after a signing bonus and relocation that they walk away. We want to get a commitment from them that they're going to be here for a while, and most agencies have that. And then the other thing that I recommended that I thought we should look at is actually using the possibility of an employee referral program, or use existing staff to make recommendations on candidates, and you have a reward for them to do that. But not just to give you a name. The person actually has to be hired. They have to pass their probation. I mean, again, it would have to be defined. But these are things that are typical as part of these programs.
And that's what you covered under your finder's fee? Is that where that comes, Francine?
Yes. I just threw a lot of stuff out here, again, to get it before the board and have a discussion and get a sense of where the board is on the issue. But again, it is a very complex type of thing that will need some written policies, practices, and procedures so everyone understands. Otherwise, you will have a lot of morale issues about why does this one get it and not. So you have to get it out there to everyone so people understand what it is, understand why these classifications are in it, and really sell it and get a buy-in.
So you're talking about having contracts with.
Yes.
The only people we have contracts with in this county are council. Oh, that's right, you're under...
Statute.
No, I'm
That's right.
suggesting more of a service agreement. I believe the sheriff's department does it as part of the education and the money they put forth to put them through school. They ask a commitment of a certain number of years, something like, not really a contract, but...
I mean, we talked about it when the sheriff's office did that, but it works both ways. Okay.
I have a quick question on your retention, Francine. You say like the first year would be $1,000. Does that stay with them, or is that just a one-time payment?
It's a one-time payment.
Okay, so this isn't accumulating as permanent salary every...
No, it's a one-time stipend.
If you get to the fifth year and we have the 2.5% that we already have in place for a 5-year, would you then be proposing something in addition to the 2.5%, or is the 2.5% then adequate for the fifth year?
What are you talking about, 2.5%? You mean when they move?
We have an incentive now of 2.5% of additional pay.
The first longevity? The first longevity...
When you're here for 5 years.
Right, 5.5 or 6, depending on when you were actually hired. So this actually is year 5. Suggests a $5,000 stipend when you hit the fifth year. Or 3, excuse me.
But that's above and beyond the...
That's outside of the normal system process, yes.
So they could get $3,000 plus 2.5% of their salary.
When they hit 5.5 or 6, a new employee has to get to 6 years. So what it does is it makes a stipend.
When did that happen? I thought it was 5 years.
No.
It used to be. We changed that in negotiations to coincide with the probationary period. So what this does is year 1, they get a stipend, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
Then at 6, they move to their first longevity. So it's a constant increase, where they're constantly seeing salary to keep them here. That's the concept, the money.
Just to check it out, the probationary period for planner 3s and engineers is 1 year, is that correct?
All employees are 1 year.
It's 1 year. All right.
Yes.
So these would mostly be 6-year for the
Yes. And that's why there would, again, there would be a flow of constant increase in salary.
So for the planner 3s, for the emergency salary adjustment, 12%. So if the board allocates and adjusts a salary increase for all employees in that bargaining unit, that will be on top of the 12%, correct?
For all the planners. The cost that you have here...
Right. But they're part of a negotiating unit we're into negotiations with all of the groups in Calaveras for salary increases. I mean, we're negotiating, or will be with DSA, or will be with the SEIU, with the mid-management, and so forth. If the board approves a salary increase for that group, that will be on top of the 12%.
Yeah, if you negotiate anything in the MOU, that would be outside.
I didn't say I was going to vote for it. I just said, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I sort of missed your point.
It's all part of general fund money. Thank you.
This would, however, take these particular, or at least the planner 3 position out of consideration for equity adjustments, because that would have been addressed in this
That's
cycle.
correct. Yes.
Well, I guess my own feeling is we need to do something. It's absolutely critical that these engineering and planning positions be filled. It's a pilot program, and I'm willing to move that the resolution be passed with the caveat that maybe you come back in 3 or 4 months and let us know how we're doing, and are we getting these positions filled? Are we getting qualified applicants and the like? If we're going to have a pilot program, I guess we should, have a review of how we're doing.
Tom, is your motion for both of the recommendations?
Yes. I think it's one resolution, is that not correct, for both recommendations?
Yes.
It is one resolution. I just separated the items.
I'll move it and hopefully that this is adequate to attract qualified candidates that are that are hired, and it would be nice to have a kind of a review of how it's being received and how we're doing here in 3 months or so.
I'll second this with these comments. It is true that there are other positions that we surveyed as recently as, I guess, a couple of years ago that showed that we had other inequities and we weren't able to resolve those in the last round of bargaining. I can understand how some people would feel that, why is this going through the door first? And I think it's important that we convey a message of the nature of this particular emergency. This board has committed itself to trying to accomplish a general plan in a 2-year time frame, which at this point looks somewhat optimistic, but but it is made ludicrous by the lack of personnel to do it. That it is either the height of hypocrisy or ineptitude for us to keep claiming we can do something without staff. We're completely dependent on having these positions filled, or we can't do what we say we'll do as a board. If we continue to put our whole economy in jeopardy by not getting things squared away in the planning arena, then I fear the consequences will be much greater than the expenses that we're looking at to redress this problem. Secondly, while planning is important, actually carrying out plans is at least equally important. And without engineers, I'm not sure how we deal with our bridges, our roads. We, I suppose, could do that by hiring people at 3 times the rate. But it would be better to do this in-house, both for quality control and line authority purposes, and it's more cost-effective to be able to have our own engineers. So I'm very enthusiastic about trying this, seeing it as the beginning of modernizing our effort here and to give the HR department the tools necessary to accomplish what we're asking them to do. You don't want to keep flogging a horse that hasn't been given the right feed to get it running. And in this particular case, I believe these are tools that can be well used. That said, the other part of our discussion, which is not part of this resolution, which is going to be very important, is how are those tools used? Do we get the word out? Where do we get the word out? How can we have an aggressive and equally innovative approach to letting the candidates or potential candidates out there know about our new approach? And I leave that to your worthy efforts and root you on to good success in this regard.
That was a second?
Yeah.
That was a second.
Your discussion, and yes, go ahead.
Get out of the way.
Listen, it's absolutely not my job or my business to talk about what planners or engineers make, and I would absolutely support what you're doing here today. We need to do a lot of this. But I got to tell you, it's like squeezing a balloon. Right now, we're staring at 7 openings. I just had 2 sergeants come to me, tell me that they have applied in other agencies. And what's very, very concerning about this is these are 2 kids that were born and raised in this county. Their families are in this county. And we have invested a ton in them in training because we believe that those would be the people that stay with us. I'm just asking this board, when you get into negotiations, please look at what the counties around us have been doing. We've got to do something to keep these folks. We start losing our homegrown people, we're screwed, and I don't know how we ever catch up.
Point well taken. Okay, this resolution has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries on the 5-0. Thank you, Francine.
Other jurisdictions have so much money for people.
Move on to item number 18, review of correspondence, reports, and various matters of concern to the board. Tom seems to be engaged. Russ, start there. Yeah, Russ, can I start with you, please?
Okay, I have no meetings to report this week, but I did want to just draw attention to the fact that for change, we had one letter that was actually praising us for something.
I see that.
Did you see that?
Yes.
What was that?
And
This was a letter from, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's Harold, I think it's Hanhy. Hanhy.
right.
What does the letter say, Les?
Well, he's just saying that he wants to commend the board on the decision to reorganize the county building department. Putting the septic branch within the environmental department was a good choice. Goes on to say some good things about Brian Moss and his efforts over there. And so I just...
It's very nice, and that's a good point. I did respond to that letter.
Good. Okay.
Because it stands out from all the other letters. Is that yours?
That's it.
Thank you. Rita?
Wednesday night, I have the Caltrans grant for Arnold's circulation as a livable community. We have another meeting Wednesday night. The logging jamboree is Saturday. I'm going to do it Saturday, and Russ is going to do it Sunday. Thank you very much. And that's all. That's all.
Thank you. Steve?
We have an important election about to happen in the Central Fire District, where people are looking to put parcel fees together that would sustain adequate fire and medical coverage for the area. There will be a meeting tonight at 5:30 for the Glencoe Railroad Flat residents of that district to talk about the issue, and I'll be attending that. But I would urge all people in that district to take a close look at the fire risk that we face, given the situation of fuels buildup in that area, and consider that as they look at their vote on the subject. Tomorrow I'll be going to the HRC open house between 4 and 5:30. I will be going to a meeting of the Sierra Conservancy, which I'm representing the county on. They have just made it known that they are letting out approximately $17 million of funds for conservation efforts, which is kind of interesting it segues from our earlier conversation, and I'm determined to try to make this county known to them. They're headquartered well north of here, but we will hunt them down. Then the Parks and Rec first meeting, I guess, is going to be on Thursday at 6 o'clock at CalWorks.
That's correct.
And I hope to attend that, to its inaugural meeting. And I believe that's it.
Thank you, Steve. And Tom, Brian?
I'd just like to reconfirm that on the 5th and 6th we're meeting for final budget. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, we anticipate both days.
I would, yes.
Okay. Other than that, I did meet with the Murphy's Community Club yesterday about doing some additional capital improvements to the playground there with the Native Sons participants. Michael's going to review the contract, and it may need to come back to the board for some modification or may not.
That's correct.
And so we're pursuing that project for the playground area. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have nothing to report, but I do want to I've been asked to remind the board about your Cal cards.
Oh, yes.
Get them exchanged in before.
What?
Your credit cards, your Cal cards. That's that exchange. So I don't believe I have anything else. Mr. Mitchell?
I do want to remind everybody, as Steve said, the first ever in the history of Calaveras County meeting in the Parks Commission will be Thursday night at 6. I'll be handling probably most of that first agenda. Pat McGreevy and I have met and gone over the agenda because he's been such a strong proponent of everything we've done. We do have a website that's premiering now that is on the county's website, thanks to Pat's efforts. We'll have our agendas on there. We'll have all of the progress. It's just been a terrific, absolutely terrific partnership with members of the community, and looking forward to great things to come of that. We have budget hearings. We're going to start Tuesday afternoon. I will be emailing you the normal mission statements, goals, and objectives. If you can spend some time over this Labor Day weekend looking at those are critical pieces for department heads to know your board's philosophies. Those we'll be tackling first as part of the budget process. Then I'll be doing some introductory remarks, and then we'll get into the meat and potatoes of what we're doing. Things have not changed significantly since proposed budget, so when I say figure 2 days, I think department heads have some strong feelings about the issues they're concerned with, and we have not been able to develop a significant increase in dollars. There was a report that Shirley Ryan gave you when I was cruising the Hawaiian Islands, about $400,000. That number, because of some adjustments, is only $200,000 now. So the cash carry only increased by $200,000, not by $400,000. Just want you to get started thinking about that ahead of time. A couple other items. San Andreas Sanitation District, our office continues to work with, along with the Sheriff's Office and Supervisor Claudino. There is a meeting Thursday. They do have a new attorney who I think all of us feel understands all of the issues and giving them better advice. We did receive the results of an RFP that we solicited through our office. There were 3 proposers to do a peer review. We'll be doing a committee to evaluate those proposals and then looking at funding sources for that peer review. If you remember, there was we're doing that because of the jail and the government center issues, but there is a private party who's interested in providing funding for that peer review. So our anticipation is that that would be no cost to the county once we work that arrangement out. And I think that pretty well does it.
Tom, the meeting on Thursday, what is, where is it and when is it?
I show it on my calendar on Thursday. It is at the San Andreas offices, district offices here in San Andreas.
In the evening?
Actually, I have it in the morning at 9 o'clock. So it's kind of to discuss.
So it's a special meeting.
It is a special meeting. I think their new attorney will be present in there that's helping them through, I think, some of the issues, the demand letters and so forth that your board had previously seen. I think those are being rescinded, and there are different discussions taking place.
Yeah, so, interesting process.
It's interesting, very interesting process. So.
Thank you. Jim? Nothing. Madeline? Okay, I don't know if we're going to have time to go to lunch. We have 2 closed sessions now? We do. You have any estimate of those? Well, we can't really estimate the time.
Shall we order in?
I'm wondering.
Why don't we just do them after lunch?
Do them after lunch?
Yeah, or we can do them after the study session.
After the study sessions, where are we going to lunch?
The first closed session can probably be done in 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay. Pardon me, Jim?
I'm guessing, this is really a wild guess, but probably the first one could be done in 10 or 15 minutes if we wanted to try to do that now.
Let's do it afterwards, 10 or 15 minutes is going to matter.
Yeah, let's do them both after lunch then, and we're going to go to the La Hacienda for lunch, and so this meeting's adjourned.
How do you